Welcome to the Concordia Publishing House podcast, where we consider everything in the light of Jesus Christ, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I'm your host, Elizabeth Pittman. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all here today. I'm thrilled to be joined by our friend Heather Ruesch. And hey, Heather, how are you?
Hey, it's so great to be here with you, Elizabeth, and everybody out there.
It's going to be so much fun, and it's such an important topic that we're talking about, because what we understand and what you're going to share with us is that there is a war raging for each of us. And it really boils down to something that we need to understand, and we need to understand that we matter to God, because everything comes out of that. When we know that our identity is secure, our self-worth, it all comes from the fact that God created us special and unique, and it's an amazing thing. So I'm so glad that you're with us today to talk about that.
Yay.
So for our listeners, I wanted to just give you a little bit of background on Heather. She's a life issues speaker. She's an author, fantastic singer, and all around a lot of fun. She was kind of like doing some music for me earlier as we were getting going. So it's a big topic that we're talking about, but the way that you deliver it is very effective. As you've been talking about this is not just kind of a hobby of yours. This is a passion of yours in talking to students and groups about the fact that we matter to God. Tell us what this looks like in the context of your You Matter tour.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's so great to be here with you. I just love being here and, having opportunities to work with and in partnership with CPH. So thank you guys. Thanks everybody out there who's joining us today. Yeah, this conversation about worth and self-worth, our worth to God. I heard a pastor say a long time ago, if you're going to be effective in anything you do, you need to be a fanatic about it. I am fanatically committed and passionate about the fact that God's value of human life is the center and the core of every single other thing that happens, that radiates out from our lives and that pours back into us. This is the breakdown. This is the conversation that we need to have. And that's why I feel it's so easy for us to have this conversation. Yes. I try to make it as conversational as I can, because there have been so many stigma related things around it. So there's lots of stigma around being pro-life. And that's unfortunate because, aside from politics, aside from opinions, aside from, personal testimonies and experiences, the truth and the fact of the matter is that we are God's most priceless possessions. And when we understand that, it's from that point forward, and constantly coming back to that and drawing from it, that, our lives fall into place, that everything else in our life, kind of takes its proper order. We have a God of order, right?
Absolutely. And yeah. I remember, I always knew this instinctively, but when I read your book for the first time, Sexuality Mentality, there was a way that you phrased the fact that because we are created by God and that we are priceless to Him, that affects everything we do and every way that we treat other people, the way we treat our own bodies. And it just encompasses everything from the physical to conversational to everything. And I've found myself with my kids when they're not being kind to one another. I'm like, really? And I've kind of reflected back on the things that you said in there about how that the fact that we matter means we need to treat other people like they matter, because they matter just as much as we do.
Yeah. And when we understand, and this is the big linchpin in this, is that we cannot value other people. We can say that we want to, we can try, but ultimately we're not going to be able to live this out. To live out day to day in our interactions with people as we build relationships, we're not going to be able to live out God's value of life and His worth, His value, the worth that He's placed on human life. We're not going to be able to live that out unless we first recognize it about ourselves. And that's such a healing, powerful thing, and it's a process. So that's, when we're talking about the You Matter tour is a 50 to 60 minute presentation that we have brought all across the country to junior high, senior high, college campuses, churches. My goal is to equip, especially teenagers, obviously everybody, but my passion is for these teens, that we would be able to equip them to not just be pro-life, but to know how to have the tools to hashtag how to, right? How to live with worth. And what does that look like? What does it look like? It looks like first understanding the worth that you have and where it comes from. It comes from Jesus Christ himself. At the core of every one of us, Heidi Gaiman is amazing. She's also a CPH author, but she, is kind of my sweet friend who's my mental health guru, right? So she always has great little tidbits that she sends, my way, and it's just awesome. Anyways, she always says trauma is always held in the body somewhere. And that trauma very often, we'll say, we all felt it before, the pit in your stomach, right?
Absolutely.
So it's funny because she was talking to me about the pit in your stomach and how trauma very often will be held, in the center of who you are. I have always said every one of us has a blue dot. And that's like, my kind of like very tangible way of giving a good, strong visual as to how this works. We have a blue dot. That's the core of who we are. It's our spirit. And Psalm 139 says that we were woven, in our mother's womb, before anybody could ever see us or know us. Our spirit, God created our spirit. So here he is. He's starting with this spirit. And then he's like weaving in, literally, throughout Psalm 139, we hear this terminology. He's weaving in physical body, mental, emotional, social aspects, and these components together create us as whole people. So, but we start with the spirit first. And so, therefore, we have to go to where our spirit finds value and identity rather than where our physical body, our thoughts, our emotions, or our social interactions find worth and identity in our world. And that's the You Matter Tour. We're giving tools to students and hopefully then, all the teachers and the parents in their lives as well, to be able to live out God's value of human life.
And that's so important these days because we really have, as a culture, lost a lot of our identity. And it's become so easy for anyone, really, teens especially, but anyone who has access to technology, we can pick and choose our identity. Just click along, like, oh, here, I found a group, and it's so fluid, and it's not the way it was designed to be. Tell us about this war or this battle that's waging. I mean, what are we really up against here?
So we're up against the deception of Satan. We are pawns in Satan's vengeance to take God down. Right? We know that that's what is happening right now, that this is spiritual, this goes beyond us. But one of the things that I think we really have to focus on, especially when we're trying to meet people where they're at, with everything that the culture is surrounding us with that sounds almost good, right? I think it's really important that as Christians, there is an element of being able to meet people where they're at. And what I have found is that when I am open to hearing their stories and hearing their perspectives, they're open to hearing mine as well. So, when we recognize that this is a war, that we are targets, I think it was Luther that said if we realized, the arrows that were being shot at us every day by the evil foe, we would certainly be coming to the Lord's table, yeah. Right? We would be receiving Christ over and over and over as much as we could in order to strengthen ourselves. And, that too is a huge part of our teaching. And, where do you receive Christ? How do you defend yourself in this battle? It's not going to be found in the self-help books. It's not found in your sexual identity. It's not found in who loves you the most or who doesn't. It's not found in where you're accepted or, held up. It's not found in anything that this physical body is capable of. Our only defense against this battle, against Satan and his attacks on us, is Jesus Christ. And so, we're constantly bringing forth the truth to students to say, where do you find Jesus? Where is Jesus found? He is found in your baptism. That's where your identity is. When you were joined with Christ, he is found in his body and blood. Think of the power of food and how it impacts us negatively or positively, right? But what if that food is Jesus? Right? What does that do in order to equip us to go out into the world? Jesus, where's Jesus found? He's found in his word. He is found in the forgiveness of sins. These are things that, our students may be hearing and may even be, receiving, but do they fully understand that this is it? Like, this is it. So, that I think we have to be able to just say to students and have the opportunity, have a platform to say to them, guys, the world's telling you And your sinful flesh is telling you that your identity and that your defense is in all of the finding your place in this world, and being successful or being attractive or being loved or being, but it's not, because you're not just a physical body. You are first a spirit, and your spirit will always long for the acceptance and love of your Father, who is spirit. So it's just an awesome play that we can point out. It literally is so simple. All we're doing is just saying, hey, here's the information. Now you know it.
And it's so great. You talk about like the word and how great that is. And I've just, in my morning devotions, I use Today's Light, and the readings are in Ezekiel right now. And this morning's first was where God gives him the scroll to eat. And he's digesting God's word, and it was sweet like honey.
Yes.
And that's what God wants us to digest that. And so that feeds us as we center ourselves in where our identity truly lies. Now, you've talked about times where, in this world, we seek what makes us feel good. Mm-hmm. And it might feel good for a moment, but then it goes away, and then we're left wanting. And how does that vicious cycle play out?
Oh, man. So, it's amazing because, and it is so true. I've seen it in my own life. I know you have, everybody out there has seen it in their own lives. We go after the things that make us feel good. And, especially in a time when there are stressors, one of the things that's become really evident to me in the last year and a half, is just, especially with COVID and with the pandemic and everything going on with that, is that stress is a massive motivator in our lives. And so when we have any additional stress in our life, and when we don't have the tools to manage that stress or to cope with that stress, and hopefully alleviate some of it, because there are certain things, this is reality. Yeah, there are certain things that you can eliminate, but you have to know and be able to recognize those things. And so having the tools to do that. And there are some things that you've got to be able to just roll with. And do the best that you can, to be flexible and to balance it with other things in your life. And so as we recognize that stress is a huge motivator, stress very often will drive us into a place where we are seeking. We're trying to fill that void. We're caught up in this, turmoil. I call it my tornado. I'm like spinning and spinning.
Just give me peace. Give me something to make me feel at peace.
Yeah. And I'm grasping for things because I just don't have the cognizance yet to say, no, you need to slow down. You need to balance, put things in order. What is it that's triggering, this response in you right now? And I think so. One of the things, as I'm counseling with teenagers, that's one of the things that I'm recognizing, especially, is that they're coming to me with anxiety, depression, stress, and wanting tools to cope with that. And the first thing that we're doing is we're going back to what's going on that's causing those things. And how can we put good tools in place in order to balance those things? And then let's talk about maybe, the symptoms of that. Maybe these poor choices that are happening in your relationships, maybe, the crowd that you're hanging out with, or the decisions that you're making, or the thoughts that you're having. And very often it is the thoughts. The thoughts often lead us then to the action, and so, but those thoughts cause guilt and shame sometimes as well. And so, being able to back that up and say, okay, I'm not going to really focus on the thoughts and the shame, and, the emotions right now. I'm going to focus on what's causing those things so that we can balance your life out. Because very often you'll find that when you have the tools to keep your life balanced physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and spiritually, when that wheel is operating in balance, those other elements, emotions and thoughts, and relationships, they very often fall into healthier places.
That's a good place to be. I know what you described. Heidi Gaiman has a new book coming out soon, and she'll be on a future episode of the podcast where she's talking about brokenness and how we can find hope even working through the brokenness. And we're all broken. And when those things happen, and those are the things I think that you're referring to when you talk about, what's the root cause of why we're feeling this way that's sending us into this spiral. And we have to get back in balance to find our way out.
And sometimes we just need somebody, and this is really the heart and my passion behind the You Matter Tour. We just need somebody to say, hey, let's take a minute and talk about this. Yeah. Because the reality is, when do we do that? And who do we have the opportunity to do it with? And so that's one of the things that we've just seen is so powerful. And it drives my passion, to be able to get out there in front of more students, being with more people, because these kids are struggling. Our families are struggling. And we just, my entire heart is just to be able to provide an opportunity to have this conversation and give this information because it's transformational.
Oh, and it's so easy for people to think that sharing our fears and our weaknesses or being vulnerable
Yeah.
is weakness.
Yeah.
And instead of finding someone that they can go to and have an honest conversation, they're left relying on their own devices, and that is not a healthy place to be.
Not at all. And you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up, Elizabeth, because, one of the main, I just did a women's conference a couple weeks ago, and this was the topic. It was vulnerability. And what comes out of it? We're so scared of being vulnerable and putting ourselves in the position where we have to say, like, I'm not doing good,
Yeah.
or I'm failing here, or I'm struggling here, or here's the big one, like, I did it already. That
Yeah.
happened already. Now what do I do?
And that
So,
adds embarrassment on top of
oh
the fear.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you do have to very much, there is an element of, as you reconcile through that and as you try to make the next right choice, there is an element of just, you have to, being able to come to the place where you can say, I might lose some friends. There may be some casualties in this. People may not trust me again for a little while. They may doubt me. But it's more important for me to do this next right thing so that I don't continue to fall backwards, but move forward. I tell my girls all the time, throw your shoulders back and your chin up. There's nothing that, that we're not going to go through together. Right.
Yep.
And so, to be able to recognize, and here's a beautiful, beautiful piece of this. And I think it's the motivator that allows us to kind of be more vulnerable, is that out of vulnerability comes empathy. Empathy. And empathy, this has been my, like, I have talked and talked and talked and stood on my pedestal for years and years and years about this. Empathy connects us. Empathy is the thing that makes us relevant to somebody else before us, whether it's our children, whether it's our parents, our neighbor, our congregation member, a student, someone on the other side of the political line, whatever it is. Empathy connects us. If I can say to you, Elizabeth, I hear you, and I've been there. I know what you're talking about. This happened to me, maybe not in the same way, but man, this makes me think about when, my life was in the same place that yours is, or whatever. When we have the opportunity to listen to each other in vulnerability, at that point, then we can share together, right? In our stories, and our stories connect us with empathy. And that is the most incredible gift of God. I mean, ultimately, who is the greatest source of empathy in our lives? Who saw, to come and connect with us in an empathetic way more than anyone else in the whole world, right? Here, I'm Jesus Christ. I'm going to take all of your sins, all of your stories, all of your troubles, all of your thoughts, all of your experiences. I'm going to take them onto myself, and I'm going to take them to the cross and die for them and bury them. So to be able to see how this all, like, this is the image of God. This is how we learn to relate with each other, is by looking to Jesus and to see, and this is something that gets skewed quite a bit. I think we're seeing that, especially with sexuality and, some of the issues that we're struggling with right now, as a nation. This is going to be skewed, and it's already being skewed, and it's an almost truth. It kind of sounds right sometimes, but it ultimately is defacing God's value of human life, and it's making God's value of human life subjective. It's, and that's not God's intention at all. That's
Not at
dangerous.
all. It's very dangerous, and it's a slippery slope that once started, it speeds up really fast.
Yeah.
So how is Satan using sexuality against us?
So I think it's really important that we understand that that from a Christian perspective, we can say this is dangerous, and people will think that we're just talking about, our staunch religious beliefs, and we're just saying, well, it's dangerous because it's not Christian. Okay.
Right.
But this is why it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it is skewing the order of how God created things. And God creates order in our lives for our benefit, right? Because he knows that as sinful fallen people, we're going to struggle and we're going to be trying to find our way and pulling our blocks and putting them in whatever order we want because we just don't know better, you know?
Right.
And that's where, when I'm speaking with teens, this is so, so important. They think they know. And
They
honestly,
do.
and there are a lot of times where I'm not afraid to wrestle with things that I don't understand. And I think that's what's giving me, the insight and the empathy, right? To be like, okay, I see you're struggling and I see that this is your reality and this is your truth. And you think that this is going to be the answer to your problems, right? And I see how Satan is using our sexuality, as a means to say, this is your worth. This is how valuable you are, by how desirable you are. And that is such a superficial view of something that God has created so with such incredible depth, right? And so when we look at it, of course he does that. So of course he does it because we are visually wired, right, to be sexual people, to connect with one another, and not just in sexuality, but in relationship. So relationships are built one interaction after the next. And so if we are looking at interactions, what's the fastest, quickest response in an interaction that I can usually get from somebody? It's going to be sexual.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so if I'm somebody who's needing attention, who's needing affirmation, who just needs somebody to pay attention to me and just know that I'm there, see me, just to see me. Sexual attention, sexuality is going to be their first go-to. And I can speak from personal experience. When I was in college as well and in high school, that was something that I found very effective for myself. And it's a hard thing to look back on that and that I think too is something that's heartbreaking for me, because I just didn't know better.
Right.
Nobody had told me any differently. And so, but I also think that we have to recognize what a mockery, this superficial value of life, of human life, when we say you're just a physical body with physical value, physical worth, physical capabilities. What a mockery of this incredibly intricate, vastly, diverse, uniquely created masterpiece that you are.
A friend of mine and I will talk, and my oldest son is in high school now, and as I look around, and so I'm paying a little more attention to how the girls are behaving.
It happens to us all. I have
I
one
know.
too.
Oh, my son hasn't
Yeah.
quite started.
Yeah.
He's kind of oblivious, and that's fine by
That's
me.
so
That's
great.
so fine by me.
Yeah.
But I watch a friend of mine and I will talk about this. We're like, okay, and my husband and I will too. Like, if we're glad we're boy parents, number one, but if my
Mhm.
daughters were behaving in some of the ways that you see these girls
Mhm.
behaving, in terms of it, just putting themselves out there in a very sexual way, and you
Yeah.
can see that they're doing it to try to get attention
Yeah.
and to try to draw attention to themselves, and I'm presuming here, but to make themselves feel
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
and that's going to spiral down somewhere else, and it's just like, you don't need to do that. You
Yeah.
don't need to put yourself out there in that way, um, to get the feedback and the attention that really
Mhm.
matters. And it's hard to watch because
Mhm.
you're kind of helpless to do anything about it except to,
Mhm.
talk with your own kids
Yeah.
about, okay, this is your worth, and this is why you matter, and this is why you don't want to go down this path,
Mhm.
because it's a serious weapon that Satan's using.
Absolutely. Well, and just to expound on that, one of the things that we've done here in our home is we've pointed that out. Oh, it breaks my heart when I see sweet little so and so out there with their booty shorts on, and just, and I'm not knocking booty shorts. I'm just saying, like, there's a time and a place. So, but when you see a vulnerable student, we try as a family to reach out to that student or to encourage our children to not participate, but to recognize that that student is somebody whom Christ died for, first and foremost, but also who's struggling. And so maybe there's an area that you can help them, maybe not, maybe not. we're commanded to called to love our neighbors. And so if those people are in our circles, then we can love them. Absolutely. We can throw them a smile. We can give them a wave when we go by. We can just let them know that we accept you because you are a child of God. But I also think that there are different, there's also a whole different thing at play here. And I think when we see those behaviors, we have to recognize, as frequently as it's happening out there, we have to recognize that, we have some work to do. We need to counter, this message of the culture that's feeding them this lie. It angers me. In Psalm 139, the psalmist makes this flip in the very end, and he says, "I hate them with complete hatred. The enemies of God, I hate them." But I get that because, I can see very, very clearly as a mature Christian who's been a pro-life speaker, educator now for, 15 years, I can see all the intricacies and the ways that Satan is using this battle of sexuality to tear our kids down, to tear our families down, and to tear the church down. And so I can look at those sweet kids and I can say, I see this for what it is. And it angers me that Satan has that hold on you. And I'm not okay with it. So I got to do something. And that is the heart right there behind the You Matter tour. It is, what can we do? How can we live out God's value of life? What can we say? What can we be? How can we be walking testimonies, not just in our words? Yes, I'm pro-life. I wear the t-shirt. I've got the bumper sticker, right? But how can I be a walking representation? And that's not to say that and I think that is much more effective in our day-to-day interactions and in our mentality. And that's what my book is about, Sexuality Mentality. It's about how do we make this shift in our perception, our worldview, so that every single behavior, every action, the way that we approach ourselves and others is one that first and foremost honors life, honors human life. Ours first and then others.
So what are some of the ways that we can do that? And I think part of it is recognizing the propaganda that's coming our way. Mm-hmm. But how can we get our heads on straight in terms of approaching our day-to-day lives like this?
Well, I think it starts first, the reason that it's called the You Matter Tour is because I can speak it out from myself, and I can say to you, you matter, and there's nothing subjective about that. I'm not, and in the same way, I can speak it to myself as well. So You Matter says that every one of us has equal value in God's eyes. Okay. So first then, in order to be tangible about it, and as we look at putting tools in place to live this life, we have to look and we have to know for ourselves. We have to put the time required into balancing our physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual lives. And that's most often the hardest part of it is, retraining your brain to say, okay, where am I at physically with my body? Am I stewarding this body well? Are my thoughts held captive to the word of God? Do I have good places where I can work through these things that I'm thinking that I can't necessarily speak? Because God gave us these emotions and these thoughts. They are perfectly beautiful, wonderful things, but we have to know how to cope with them, right? Good, bad, and ugly. And we also need to know how to steward them, so that everything operates, in a healthy way. And so I always come back to, and then also I'll finish this part. I'll come back to the house. Socially, we need to take a hard look at our relationships. Are we surrounding ourselves with healthy people who are aligned, with the same convictions that we have? Are we willing to say, I would rather have fewer who are in line with me rather than many who are not? And then spiritually, are we in church? Are we receiving Christ over and over and over? God tells us where we can find him. And so to be able to make that a priority is the most life-saving thing that we can do in order to live a life that values life. So the way that I say that is, and then tangibly, and this is something that we go into, in the tour as well, is you got to take care of your physical body. You have to put good things in it. Right? You have to health food, good sleep, lots of water, there are times you got to do your exercises. You are worth caring for your body, because ultimately when any one of these areas is lacking, it's going to affect every everything else, because you're not just, it's all woven together.
It really is.
Right?
It really,
So
I mean, I didn't sleep last night, which is why I totally bungled the beginning.
Right. I mean,
And all
it's
of it
just,
works together.
yes, and so, but let's follow that line. I didn't sleep last night. So, my thoughts, were all jumbled and not in order. Then I'm feeling, self-conscious about how things are going to happen. I'm a little bit embarrassed, and then I'm down about it. Well, then my social interactions, I just want to stay in my office all day long, and then am I going to go to church on Sunday? God, I'm going to have to pull myself out and go do it. Right? So
Absolutely.
that's how it all affects, it affects us all. So to be able to say, oh, okay, well, I don't really have, the time to put into my physical body right now, but I'll go and I'll do some crafts to take care of my emotional and mental self. Well, no, we have to wake up every morning with that intentionality to say, I'm going to do one good thing for my body today, even if that's all I can do. It's amazing, the power in just saying, well, I'm going to do this one good thing for myself today, for my physical body. The arts, God gave us this incredible ability to work hard, and that is what we were commanded to do so we can provide for our families. But then he also gave us the ability to play. And the power of play is, and this is where, I'm a musician, I'm a singer, I love the arts. My kids are all, their whole lives, we've plugged them into arts, and sports fall into that as well. So, building things, creating things, developing things, music, writing, journaling, sculpting, painting, singing, all of these things are things that God gave us to help balance and give us a portal to get all the things that we can't speak out of our bodies, so that they're not just, tearing everything apart from the inside out.
I love how that playtime, or for me, it's a long walk,
Yeah.
or just kind of where, your brain is not thinking too much, but the physical activity, it sparks the creativity, and it usually will bring it right back. And where you're like, if I get stuck, or if I have to do some sort of I'll go walk, and I will walk until it comes it. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, there it is. And I can get back on track.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is amazing how it all is so interwoven.
It is. It really is. And, for our students to understand, that these are very simple, just first of all, that this exists. This is how you work. So I think there's definitely like a physiological element, and there's a lot of, scientific research that goes back to just, students who have an awareness of how their mind and body work, have much more, have much healthier outcomes in life. And so it's just, very much an awareness, like physiologically, this is how you're wired. This is what you need. And then here are some tools so that when you fall off and when you feel like you're spiraling, you can get back on. You know how to get back in order again. You know what to do to put your life back together, so that hopefully these kids aren't getting, further and further away from this grounded sense of worth in Christ. And the beauty of this message too is that we brought this message into public schools as well. Because, even though we're not able to say, that Jesus Christ is the source of all worth and identity, we are able to present it in a way that still we can stand and say the value of human life is the most important issue on the table. And this is how it affects you. And this is why. And it's just completely mind blowing.
I'm so glad you're
at
going
a
into
secular level. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
That's fantastic.
And to me, that was, that's not a compromise. That's a step in the right direction. Because those kids that are listening in the public schools, those kids that have a Christian background and have a Christian, family or support system, they're going to get it, right? But the kids who don't, now maybe we've just opened a door, right? That, they're going to start thinking about this on a different level. They're perceiving it from a different angle, and their mentality is starting to shift.
Just all we can hope for, and then let the Spirit do its work.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up, Heather, what encouragement do you have for our listeners? I mean, it's a big topic. It's a crucial topic.
Yeah.
What encouragement do you have for those of us, those folks that are listening today?
My encouragement is, you can do it. Like, this is something, and what is our message? What's your message to the world? What is your message? That's my encouragement, because, being able to think about where we are and what we want to accomplish is a great gift and freedom that we have in this world. As Christians, as, Americans, we have the opportunity to be intentional and to be able to say, this is something worth doing. And so the encouragement is just, be intentional about how you want to live God's value of life out and how you want to teach it. And then be intentional about trying to, develop that mindset, that mentality. And you have everything you need in Jesus Christ. So go and receive him over and over again. And if that's where we start, that is where we all come. That's where we start. It's where we stop off for our, daily intakes. And it's where we end. And so we have every tool that we need in order to move forward. And so you can do it because you have Christ, the strength of Christ in you, Christ himself present with you. And so you're never alone, and you are worth it. And because you're worth it, they're worth it.
That is a fantastic message that we all need to remember. Heather, where can our listeners connect with the You Matter Tour?
Okay, so we have a website. It's youmattertour.org. So you can connect with us there. You can also follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. We have little encouragements that go out pretty frequently now. And then you can always reach me as well through CPH. Of course, Sexuality Mentality information is there. We have several great studies that go with that book. And the book was intended, as you know, Elizabeth, to be a bridge to start having this conversation and to start making that mentality shift. And so it's a quick, easy read. There's the life course that goes with it. So you can do little videos with me just to kind of fill in the blanks and answer some questions, go a little deeper. There's a youth Bible study as well that's available. That's also an accompaniment to the book. So yeah, there's some different places you can do that. Connect with us online, on Facebook, on social media. We'd love to hear from you guys.
And we'll link to all those different places in the show notes. So listeners, I encourage you to go check out the You Matter Tour and the information that Heather has there. It's great information, and you won't regret taking the time to spend with your families and with your students in your life going over this. Heather, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. It's always fun to be here with you.
Absolutely. We hope to see you in St. Louis again sometime soon.
Absolutely. I do too.
All right.
Take care. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Catch you next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Concordia Publishing House podcast. I pray that this time was valuable to your walk with Christ. We'd love to connect with listeners on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Concordia Pub. Visit cph.org for more resources to grow deeper in the gospel.